Hi everyone, my name is Chris Humphreys. I'm a 54-year-old man and I'm from Utah, Mormon boy, born and raised here, graduate of Brigham Young University. I probably am the poster child of white privilege. I was born to the last of 7 kids to a dentist that was pretty wealthy. And of course, being the last kid and wealthy, I tended to get, you know, a lot of benefits and although I don't apologize, I am grateful for what I was given. And the left would probably put me on a poster and have chance against me if they knew me. But like I said, I make no apologies of it. I'm very grateful for my upcoming. I was born to a man by the name of Dr. Roy Humphreys, and he was a wonderful man. And this is a guy that taught me. He bought a farm just so he could teach his kids how to work. And although he was wealthy and we were raised, pretty well off, he wanted us to learn how to work on a farm so we knew how to do what we did. And he used to give us, it was like a couple 100 yards long, and he'd give us a row that we had to weed. And every day he'd say, you can't do anything till that row is finished. And he'd make us pull weeds all the way along this 200-yard, 150-yard row of corn or whatever it was that we were raising at that time. And we had to pull every weed, and he'd go out and inspect, and if it wasn't done, he'd say, go finish your row and don't come back until it's done. Finish your damn row. And he was a tough man, but he was a good man, and he taught me how to work hard. And at 18, he cut the apron string and said, you're on your own. And he didn't pay for my college. I paid every cent of it. He didn't buy me a car. I bought a 15-year-old Datsun 310 that vapor locked during the summer, like every day. It was horrible. And he didn't pay for my wedding. Me and my wife had to come up with the money, and we had a very modest wedding. And my wife Melanie's from Canada. She was lucky enough they were down here visiting, and her mom, when it was pregnant, and ended up going into labor with her while she was visiting down here, and that's how she became a dual citizen of America. And although she grew up in Canada, she came here to school and we met, and because the circumstance was right, we were able to, she took on the role of, instead of being a dual citizen, being United States solely citizen. And we've been ever grateful for that. But we lived on nothing. We didn't have we didn't have nothing when we started. Nobody gave us anything. We started very humble. And my first job, I think I got a job out of college after I finished. I was $50,000 in debt. I had a credit card that had $1,200 worth of available cash on it, and $36. And I got a job in Vancouver, Washington. And we threw everything in our 20-year-old truck, and we had one child at that time, a 2-year-old child, and we drove to Washington. And we took all $1,200 out in a cash advance. And between that and the $36, we got our first apartment in a really rough area. But that was our beginnings. And from there, we worked our cans off to get where we're at. And I'm grateful for that experience, because it makes so sweet the experience we have now and what we have. I've been a conservative and a Republican my whole life, and I don't apologize for that. I like being that. But I think technically I'm still a Republican. And I figuratively walked away about 2 years ago. I think I'm still on the rolls. I like having that because if there's a close primary going on, I like to be able to vote for, the one I like. But I consider myself an independent conservative. I vote Democratic every once in a while. And honestly, my view is that the founding fathers were inspired. I believe they were God-driven to come up with this land. What they came up with was nothing short of brilliant. And the more I learn about it, and I think they built a system that would have Republican and Democrat that would always check each other and that when the pendulum would swing one way, the other party would pull them back. And it's usually the people that pulls them back, right? Because when they get sick of one party because they're going too far in craziness, they switch over and join the other party. And that's what's going on now with us, right? We're going to the other side because we've had enough of the pendulum going too far. And just as well as it could go one way, the Republican Party could go the other and start doing stupid stuff. But I decided about 2 years ago to figuratively leave the Republican Party, to walk away, basically. And the reason why is Mitt Romney disturbed me. This was the man I campaigned for. I belong to the same religion he does. I campaigned for him, fought for him, gave him lots of money. And I watched Donald Trump endorse him, give him millions of dollars, write checks to him. I watched Mitt Romney write social media on Facebook, little blurbs about how great Donald Trump was and his wisdom and business and etc. And what really disturbed me is that when Donald Trump decided to run, Mitt Romney, after all the things that Donald Trump had done to him, stabbed him in the back. And it really bothered me. I lost sleep over it. I wrote letter after letter telling Mitt what a fake he was. And he was a fake. And the things he said were wrong. They weren't just differences. I understand differences. I respect differences. I really do. In fact, I respect the argument out there. I think it keeps all of us in check. The argument back and forth. I think our founding fathers basically built an argument of debate. But that debate constantly keeps us centered. And if we go one way, we're pulled back to the other. And I love it. I think it's that's why we have the country we have, is because the freedom to think different and to fight for our thoughts. But back to Mitt Romney, I watched after Donald Trump had did so much for him. And the words that Mitt called him is a brilliant businessman. Then when Donald Trump ran, Mitt Romney went after him. His famous University of Utah speech, where he stabbed Donald Trump so bad in the back. He called him a racist, misogynist. He called him every name in the book. He went after him and did the exact same evil tactics that the left and the media did to him a couple years earlier. And it was so disheartening, and it bothered me. It kept me up at night, because this is a guy I idolized, a guy I thought was perfect, the guy I thought would have been the greatest president ever. To watch him stab someone else in the back the way he did. And it wasn't just differences. It was vindictive. It was horrible. And I realized that I decided then that all politicians are evil. I decided that back in Washington corrupts everyone. It's toxic poison. It poisons everything back there in that beltway. And Mitt Romney, I became no fan of his. And I thought I thought he was a silver-toothed snake. And but I just did a lot of thinking at that point and decided that I'm not going to be beholden to any party. That I consider myself a independent thinking conservative, and I vote on what I think is best. And most of the time, don't get me wrong, it's on the Republican side 95% of the time. But once in a while, I see a good Democrat. I see a good libertarian. I see someone that, a good conservative Democrat, or a good blue dog Democrat that's just fighting for a good cause. And I don't mind swinging the lever on that side as well. And so that's kind of my story why I walked away. I love this country. I watched, it took me a long time to warm up to Donald Trump. I was a Ted Cruz guy from the beginning, and for 9 months I watched him, and I got more and more curious, where I watched every single rally he had, and I'd watch these crazy rallies, and I scratched my head and wonder, how the heck does someone get that many people out? And I still like Ted Cruz, but I would watch him, and little by little I realized And as I watched him, I began to figure out what real is. That Washington wasn't real. That the politicians back there are just, they're not real. They're fake. They're peacocks. You know what a peacock is, right? Peacock's a beautiful bird. Beautiful bird. I was raised right by them. I had a neighbor that had peacocks. They're beautiful birds, and they strut around and show their feathers. But at the end of the day, you know what they are? You pluck the feathers out of them, they're not even good to eat. They're just squawking birds that shit and do nothing for nobody. They're peacocks. And I realized that politicians are like peacocks. They just strut around, they don't really do anything. And I shouldn't be so generalized, because there is some really good people out there. But I got very bitter when I watched Mitt Romney. Anyway, I'm going sideways, aren't I? I love this movement. I love you all. I think it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Some of the nutty people I've seen get on and do tapes. Oh, the transvestite man that undressed his face in front of everyone. I mean, I'm telling you, that was crazy. Good golly. He started talking, and I was kind of intrigued with what he was saying. And then when he pulled off his first eyelid, I don't think I heard a word he said from that point on. All I was intrigued of what he was doing. I'll tell you what, I like the guy. Man, I don't say this to a lot of people, but that'd be one guy I'd put on my boat and take him fishing. Because he's real. He wanted to show us who he was, and he was real. And I like that. I like all of us, because I think we are the real deal. I think we're the ones that make this country work. We're the real deal. You know. And it's a little lonely sometimes at the top. You know, I raised a boy that was an all-state wrestler, and he went to college on a scholarship. And he used to always tell me, he'd say, "Dad, it's so lonely," because, you know, when everyone else is goofing off and boating and doing whatever, he's in a workout room training. And he'd tell me how lonely it was. And then when he won a state championship, he said, "Guess what?" He goes, "It was pretty lonely at the top of that podium, but I liked it a lot." And I think that's a little like us right now. We're a little lonely, but I like this lonely. I like it a lot. I like being independent, and I like being right. And I don't care if the whole world's against me. If I know I'm right, I'm right. Right? And I know we're right. Thank you, Brandon, for what you're doing. We support you.